things are changing. And we are now so massively indebted at a time when much of the world is shedding treasuries in favor of gold. So yes, I think it would be a very big mistake to ignore it. And you can see it is being ignored. Gary, we're almost at $3,000 an ounce gold, and people are just completely asleep at the switch. When I tell you that premiums on gold and silver are the lowest I've ever seen in 35 years, I mean it. A silver or a gold eagle during the pandemic would have been $200 over the price of gold. Now you can get them for $85, $90 over. The bid prices are the lowest I've ever seen, ever in my career. The buy side. We were paying on silver eagles, you would pay $15, $16 over spot to buy them during the pandemic. You can buy them now for just over $3. Something's going on where the price of metal keeps going higher and higher. The demand by the central banks, which aren't only the wealthiest or the most well-informed traders in the world, is getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And yet the American public, look at the the GLD, it's selling. I mean, the shares are falling massively. The American public is asleep at the switch, as at the same time, the biggest money in the world is doubling down on their acquisitions. But I've never, like I said, never seen anything like this, what's happening. And for the contrarian indicator in me is screaming, if you could hear my internal monologue, screaming, like the biggest money in the world is literally draining all of the exchanges, standing for delivery in amounts so far bigger than anyone's ever seen. And everyone in this country's got their head in their ass, and they don't see it. And that is the exact type of setup that bull markets are made out of, that the big money is way positioned before everyone even has a glimmer of understanding. And that's how sophisticated these traders are, and the ability with controlling the mass media and doing all the things that they do. People are left behind. I go on these shows and try my hardest to tell people, and everyone, he's talking his book, man. Have I been talking my book for the last 4 years as the price of gold has gone parabolically higher? Yeah, silver has been a mystery. It's also the most manipulated asset in the world, but it wasn't too long ago that silver was $17 and $18. It's nearly doubled. So my mentor used to say, you make 7% per year, you're a rock star. The problem is people have so much dopamine rush from owning things like NVIDIA and crypto and Apple that they expect those types of returns. This is a outlier in historical context, and that's not how markets work. So a 30% gain in gold, or a 9.9% average for the last 25 years, outpacing the S&P just barely, even with dividends reinvested, doubling the 10-year treasury, outpacing everything traditional, isn't sexy enough. And so, you know, I think there's something to be said for the biggest money in the world having carte blanche at repositioning before the North American public even has a glimmer of understanding what's happening. That is classic textbook misdirection and you know, I don't know. It just, to me, it's the ultimate in terms of the contrarian indicator. So I guess we'll see what happens. Okay, so gold is the only other tier one asset. Central banks are buying it. Central banks are repatriating it. My entire career, the United States has always been a net exporter of gold. Since November, since the election, since November, the United States has become a net importer of gold, and which is very interesting. And we've imported about 13 million ounces of gold from all around the world, mostly London, but also Asia, and as you mentioned, Mark, the refineries in Switzerland. About 50 million ounces of silver as well. JP Morgan has already or is set to deliver for February contract $4 billion worth of gold to the COMEX. This is one of the top 2 or 3 largest shipments ever in the history of the COMEX market. JP Morgan used to have a gal who ran their trading desk named Blythe Masters, and Blythe has said publicly that they don't buy it for themselves. They buy it for customers. They don't have an house account per se, they claim. So, what customer of theirs has $4 billion to buy and take delivery of gold? My guess, it's the US government or the Federal Reserve, one or the other would be my guess. To give you an idea just how big it really is, for the February contract, a record 59,296 contracts stood for delivery so far on the February gold contract. That far surpasses the previous high of 47,132 in June of 2020 during the QE to infinity, the pandemic. That's 59,296 gold contracts at 100 ounces per contract. The previous all-time high delivery was 12,146 contracts less than what we just saw. This is no small coincidence. There are people buying, the people that know the playbook, but the retail investor, they're missing this one, Jeremy. They're missing it completely and totally. So
do you think it's just entry points?
A lot higher than people are prepared to accept. And when it gets to that level, they'll say, geez, did we miss this?
Yeah.
Looks like we missed it. And you could say a lot of people said the same thing about Bitcoin. I'm not opining on Bitcoin. I'm just simply saying it can run away really fast. And by the looks of it, things are setting up for that to happen. Now, I'm not saying it's gonna, but I will tell you everything I see would certainly be the steps that I would see happen in order for it to jettison. And I want it to be very clearly understood. When I talk about gold and silver, to me, it's wealth. It's not an investment. It's been wealth for 5,000 years through 2 world wars, German hyperinflation, the Great Depression, every pandemic, and everything the world's thrown at it. And through all of that, 5,000 years later, what do we see? Well, it's now the only other tier 1 asset, and the central banks can't get a hold of it fast enough or bring it home fast enough. And they're not doing that with anything else, including Bitcoin. Do what they're doing. Don't listen to the noise. That's the best advice I could give someone, not from me, but from what the insiders are doing. And they always know the playbook, and they always position before the people figure it out. How about Senator Cynthia Loomis from Wyoming, who advocates for revaluing gold in order to fund the strategic Bitcoin account? More and more and more people are talking about revaluing gold. How about Judy Shelton, who I just interviewed? Judy Shelton says they're going to revalue gold. Not in so many words when I asked her specifically, but she wants to have a 50-year treasury collared to gold, redeemable in gold. She said her and Trump had discussed it during the first administration. If you remember, she was his nominee to run the Federal Reserve. Wasn't confirmed. Probably will be this time, at least on the board of governors. They're good friends. She said, we discussed it. We discussed issuing them on July 4th, 2026, the 250th year anniversary. She said, Andy, they're going to do that. They're going to issue 50-year treasuries backed by gold. I said, Judy, well, what about auditing Fort Knox? She said, absolutely. That needs to be done. And she said, I said, what about revaluing gold? And not in so many words said, yes, it would benefit all the central banks who have been accumulating gold for the last several years. And it would definitely benefit the United States because every $4,000 increase in the price of gold gives a $1 trillion free and clear to the Treasury General account. All I am simply saying is that something is happening. Something is happening in the gold and silver market that I've never seen before, ever, never. And it's happening at a level that has gone completely unnoticed by the public, yet the biggest money in the world is not only rushing to accumulate, but they're draining the world's exchanges standing for delivery. Something big is coming. And if you look at a potential reset of revaluing the price of gold that all these politicians around the world are calling for to back a new system tied to a stable coin, when I did that interview with Judy, she said, my wish would be that after they issue the 50-year treasuries, we'd see a bunch of stable coins issued off of it. Well, that's the answer to the CBDC. It's the same thing in a different set of clothes. They monitor the on-ramp and the off-ramp. We are moving in a direction, I believe, as do you, I know, to a reset. How does gold and silver fit into it? I believe it fits into it backing a new system. And I think you have to let gold and silver go, well, gold in particular. I don't think we're going bimetallic, but gold will go way higher in order to stand behind a new system. Silver is the most undervalued asset in the world. And while I don't think it will be pegged to the system, the realization of its necessity in a digital, in a electronic world, is off the charts. So maybe the most undervalued asset in the world.